Now moving on to functions and the different types of functions that you can define in JavaScript. The first is called function declaration, and we'll talk about hoisting later, but first let's see how this type of functions are defined. It is just similar or exactly the same like how we mentioned the functions before. So we have the function keyword, and then you have the function name, the parameter, and then you have a return statement to return this string. So now, how are we going to call it? So this is just declaring it, right? So we have to call it as well. So over here, I have the code for calling it. And here you might think that this code will not run. Reason being that you're calling the greet function before it's even defined, right? So because it's defined afterwards, right? But function declaration have this special concept called hoisting that allows you to declare a function or variable even before you have defined it or its logic, right? So here we are calling it before the logic is being defined. So this is something that only happens in function declaration. Whereas the next type of functions, we do not have hoisting. That is, you cannot put in the calling the function before the function has been defined. You have to put it after the function that's defined. So let's go and check that out. So over here you have function expression, that is second. So here you can see we are assigning a variable to the return value of the function. So here the function logic is being defined. So then now we are not hoisting it, so we call it later on itself, and let's see if this works. Okay, so we go to the yes. So over here it works. Even hello Alice works, although we were doing hoisting. Here goodbye Bob also works. Now let's try to do hoisting to function expressions and see what happens. So I'm calling it before, and here you can see nothing executed, right? So nothing executed, that means that there's an error. And here you can see the previous error. This is the latest one, this was the previous error. So here in line 68 it's saying there's a reference error, could say goodbye is called right before you're initializing it. So that's how we can see that hoisting is not applicable for function expressions. Now I'll comment all this out because we're going to the next type. So the next type is the arrow functions. Okay, so this is something introduced in ES6 or ECMAScript 6. It's having a concise syntax and we can omit the return keyword. So over here, I'll comment this out. So this is your arrow function. So you're again same like before, we are assigning a variable to the function. And here you can see it's directly no function keyword, directly the parameters and then the arrow, and you have the logic written directly. So now if you call this, what's going to happen? So you call it the same way, you write add, like I'll log the result. Okay, so I write add, then I'm going to give some value 12 and 2 again. Okay, so let's see now whether this function is executed, and we have 14 that appears in our console. Okay, so now we go back to the console, and yes, 14 is appearing, right? So you have to be careful. This blue over here, the highlighted one, that means that this is the actual code that's running. All the others before is the previous ones that we had run. Now moving on, we'll talk about asynchronous JavaScript. So to understand that, what is that asynchronous, we'll first learn about set timeout. So set timeout is itself a function. So this is defined, actually we are calling this here, it's defined within our JavaScript already. So the creators of JavaScript already defined it. So they say that you have taken two inputs for it. Okay, so first one is a function and the second one is a time after which the function should be run. Okay, so here 1000 means 1000 milliseconds. So I am saying that run this function for me after 1 second or 1000 milliseconds. So this is what asynchronous means, that if I have all this code uncommented, all of it will run, but this piece of code over here will only run after 1 second. So it becomes asynchronous, right? So it's not happening all together. It's happening like all of a sudden after 1 second. Now this is it about that. Okay, so since this is just like a short overview of JavaScript for backend, we'll not be going deep into each of these concepts. So if you want to go deep into it, then definitely you can check out the additional resources and learn more about any topic that you want to get to know more about. Then over here you have arrays. So arrays, how do we define arrays in JavaScript? So this is it, very easy way. Okay. So here you just name your array, square brackets, and then you can put in the collection of things that you want to store in that array. And now here the push will push, again this is a function, so that's already predefined inside JavaScript. So this push will allow you to push here 6 to the ends of your array. Okay, so this will push it to the end, and pop over here will pop something that's in the end. So first I'll comment all this pop. Okay, comment these also. Okay, I'll console log the array so that you can see that what happens after push. Okay, so after push you can see 1 2 3 4 5 6. Okay, this is the latest one that was executed. Now I'll go for pop. Okay, so over here you can see the pop function popped out or removed the last number, that is 6. So now that's how we are printing the entire array. Now if you want to do something to each of the elements in the array, you want to add 1 to it, or you want to add 2 to it, or you just want to print out all those numbers one by one, for that you have this. Okay, so over here is the for each. This is just like loops, so you are already having a predefined one. Okay, so what it does is prints each of them one by one, or you can do some operation to each element in the array. So you're calling that array. Okay, so that we define, and for each number within that array, console log that number. That's how we meaning. So this num can be any variable that you define. You can define it as a, I, or anything. Okay, so what this number or any other variable will mean is the element within that. Okay, so for each number, console log the entire number. So over here you can see one by one all of them are being printed over here, all from line executed from line 93, right? So this one. So this is it about arrays. And then now you have error handling. So error handling over here, we use it for input validation if you're doing some operations from like using APIs and stuff that we'll cover later. So in that case, you use a try catch block often. So here, apart from that, you can customize like how you want the error message to be printed and things like that. So I think that's enough about the error handling part. Now the next important thing is about object declarations. You can just define your object, like maybe your pet, and like give it attributes, right? So an object has attributes, so you can define it. So here I have an attribute name and have given the value. I have the attribute age, I have given the value, and also you can define functions also within, right? So all you're using a colon and you're ending it with a comma. And then if you see, I can just call in this function myPet.run. I can call in, or I can console log the name, writing just console.log myPet.name, then it'll log Dolly, right? So here if you see, let's see if this function got executed. And here you have to also note that we're using the dot operator to call in these attributes. Okay, so here if you see, yes, run please, it's getting console logged. Okay, so this is it about objects, and now we are going to the very important concept that will help you do a weekly task, that is the document object model, or DOM. So first, to analyze or to get to know about it in like theoretically, a short overview is that whatever is there in your HTML, right? If if you can access it, that's when you can make it dynamic in JavaScript, right? So to access elements in your HTML, all the elements in HTML are converted to objects. Okay, so all of these tags over here are converted into objects. So the entire document is called a document object. Within that, you have like this hierarchy of elements that have actually become objects. So who made them objects? That is the browser itself. So which is compatible with the JavaScript. That's what is document object modeling. You're modeling your HTML into objects. And so now we can understand what's happening in here, right? So how are you able to select those HTML elements? Now obviously our browser is making them objects. Now how can you do some operation within those objects? So for that, here I have already written a paragraph with a class of paragraph. I have an h1 with a class of id of h1. I have some text written over here, and I have three divs also, right? I have three divs with the same class box and named box 1, 2, and 3. Now how am I retrieving each of these elements in my JavaScript? So that's what is selecting the HTML elements part that we're going to discuss now. So first you can get some ID element, okay, by using get element by ID. So here let me uncomment this, and here let's see what's happening. So here first what I'm doing is I'm picking the document, right? So document, then the entire document. Within that document I am getting the ID h1. So if you look into your HTML, it is nothing but this element. Okay, so when from the entire document you're picking up the one with the ID of h1. Okay, now going back to the script, you're printing that out. So what do you have to expect? The entire element, right? That entire element should be printed. So let's see if that's happening. Yes, it's happening. Okay, so in line 127 you can see the entire h1 with that id, name with id, being printed, right? Now if you want to tap into the text of this element and do some changes to it, then you can do this code. So what I'm doing again, I'm tapping into the document, that's entire HTML page. I'm getting that element with ID, and I'm going into the inner HTML, and I am saying, or I am defining what the text should change, right? So inner HTML will change the, it will take you to the text, right? And you can define it, or you can write some other text and it will get changed. Okay, so let's see if things have changed, right? So here also, since I'm printing the in line 127 h1, it's printing that I am changed as well. Now it's not I am named with ID, right? Now it's I am changed. And over here also you can see your element, here it's written I am changed instead of I am named with ID. So you can see the changes have taken place. Now we saw how we can select ID. Now how do we select class, right? So for that we can use either query selector or query selector all. So what's the difference? So query selector will just select one element. Okay, so now if you see in our HTML, you just have like over here, I'm going to tap into this element with a class paragraph. So for that I'll uncomment this code. So I have tapped into document and I'm going to select, right? Query selector is when you define, or if you call in query selector, then in your brackets you have to put in your selector, HTML selector. So since it's a class, you bring a dot. If it is an ID, you have to put hash, right? So you can use both. You can access both ID and classes using query selector. It's not that query selector is only for classes. So let's see now things work correctly or not. So it should console log that paragraph element. And yes, in line 121, it has console log the paragraph element, right? Now, same way if you do dot in HTML, you can go and tap into it and change whatever is there, the content. Now, suppose if you have a code like this, you have created 3 boxes. They are all just stationary boxes, so you just gave them the class name as box. All of them have the same class name. So how can you access all of them? So if you use just query selector and select the box, then you will notice that only the first box will get printed. Okay, you are only tapping into the first box. To tap into all 3 boxes, you will need query selector all. So over here, okay, so first I'll tap into all the boxes. Okay, so this line of code will execute first. So first I am giving, why am I giving a variable name and all, I'll define later, but what I'm doing is I'm selecting the entire element. Okay, so I'm going to document and query selecting all the boxes and assigning that to all boxes variable and console logging that variable. Let's see what happens. So here you can see a node list has been created. Line 135 is getting executed. A node list. A node list is just like arrays, and you can see 3 elements are also there. All are 3 boxes. You can see how it is being highlighted in the left hand side. And the length is also 3. It's just acting like a array. So here we just got all of it together. Now if you want to tap into each of them, just like arrays, you can use a for each loop. And with that, you can tap into each of them, right? And you can do some changes to it as well. So this is it about the DOM. Now to see all things in practice from session 1 and session 2, we will go into this example of our form. Okay, so here I have my HTML form, and I've already written down the entire code for it. I have a simple form with ID my form, and then I have the labels, first name, last name, and email, and I have input fields for each of them, and I've given them an ID as well for the input fields. And have a submit button, and the very important thing is it's of type submit. Okay, so the event that is happening in my entire form when I click on submit button is submit. So let's go open this with live server. So I've already given the styles to it in my styles.css, and I have linked to the styles as well in the top in the head section, and in my bottom I have linked to the form. Okay, so form.js, the JavaScript. So what do we want to do with this form? So here when I type in the name or last name, first name, email, I want it to display in the console, right? Let's see if we can do that. That's how it means that we are dynamically taking things from your HTML, whatever the person is typing, and we're logging it. So we have done some interactivity. So for that, we go to our JavaScript. So what do we do first? So first, when should I gather all the information? When my form is submitted. So the first thing that we do is we tap into my document. We do get element by ID. Okay, so we are getting the entire form, right? So the entire form element, we're tapping into that, and we are adding an add event listener function. Now this is new, add event listener. This is very important. So add event listener will take in 2 parameters. The event you want to listen. I want to listen to the submit event. So when my form submits, I want to do something. That is, I want to retrieve all the data and console log it. So what you will do after you submit, that you will mention in the second input, that is the function, right? What you have to do after you listen to the submit, right? So add event listener takes 2 parameters. One would be what you want to listen to, the submission, and after that, what do you want to do with it, right? After submitting, what do you want to do? So that's your second parameter. So here, second parameter, we are giving a default argument event, and we're doing event dot. So this event means what? The whole submission event, right? So event dot prevent defaults to prevent any default submission, okay, when you're reloading and things like that. And then what I'm doing over here is I'm tapping into my first name ID. Now going back to the form, the first name ID is in your input field. So that means I'm tapping into what the user inputted. Okay. So once a user clicks on submit, only we are sure that the user has inputted something. Okay. That's why we are using the submit event listener. And then here we are tapping into the first name. Okay. And then we are tapping into the value. okay, of the input. Input means we usually don't use in HTML, we use the value, what the value the person typed, and we are assigning that to the variable first name. Similarly, we're doing that to last name and email as well. So we are tapping into from the document into the email input element and then taking that value and assigning it to the email variable. Now these three variables are now local to JavaScript, right? Now you can use them and do anything with what you want, any logic you can do, right? So that's what I'm doing. My logic is to just print it out, as simple as that for now. So I'm printing it out. So let's see if this entire thing is working. Okay, going back. First, I'll open the console before entering the. Okay, so here's my console. Nothing is there now because the event will only get triggered. The printing event will only get triggered when I submit it. So I haven't put anything. So I'm just going to put some random first name, last name. Now, email would want at gmail or at something.com. The at will be compulsory because we have defined type as email. So if you go check it out in my HTML, my type for email input is email, not text. So it will want a at symbol. So now I'll just submit this and let's see what happens. And yes, so over here you can see my first name, my last name, and my email that I typed are being dynamically printed into the console. So from here you guys can do the weekly task 2, that is just you have to, like the previous weekly uh, task part 1, you had to develop or design a to-do list, right? So now what you have to do is you have that small input box in the end and you have a plus symbol or you have add symbol, right? So you have to just type some task in that box, input box, and click on the plus or add symbol and it should be printing in your console. That's it, one task that should print in the console. Okay, so that's just a practice of how you're going to use the DOM and retrieve the information from your HTML and put it into your console. So that's it about the JavaScript essentials. Hope it was clear.